definitely creating content that helps people is really the solution.
What really works is building a community, consistently doing events like webinars, and producing content specifically for certain categories.
You earn that raise and you earn that job.
Welcome to Future Fuzz, the digital marketing podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome to the next episode of Future Fuzz, the digital marketing podcast. It's a Christmas edition. We're hoping that this comes out before Christmas. And this episode is actually a redo because I'm inviting Neil back on today, which is an absolute pleasure. So we are indeed joined by Neil Chambers-Stevens, whose career has spanned iconic brands including Polaroid, Vans, Nike and Asics. Now a professional coach at Mercury Jam, Neil helps mid-career creatives boost their well-being and performance through coaching rooted in kindness. He is also the author of A Bad Hand Played Well, How to Own Your 90,000 Hours at Work, offering powerful insights for thriving in your career. Join us as Neil shares his journey and the power of kindness in work and life and how to live better by being kinder. Thank you for coming on, Neil. How are you doing?
That's a wonderful intro. Thank you very much. It's a delight to be back here again. Thank you, Justin.
Thank you so much for coming back. So last time we ran the podcast, we dove into the founding of Mercury Jam and also the publication of your book. In this particular episode, I'd like to dive in a little bit deeper into your experiences. You know, we're coming to the end of the year. It's a time for reflection. I'd like to ask you about, your focus on kindness. So how can we use kindness as a tool to remain calm in times of high pressure? Because I think December, pretty high pressure time for a lot of people. How can we use it?
Well, first of all, I think I'd kick off with the definition of kindness, or certainly my definition of kindness, because I think it's important to kind of secure that first. So kindness to me is enabling someone to be seen, heard, and valued. And I think when you give somebody that space, Justin, when you allow someone to be seen and heard and valued, it creates an understanding between two people. And I think when we have these high-pressured environments, it's important that you listen to someone, that you see someone, that you acknowledge them first. And I think one of the themes I want to talk about today is really about control and slowing things down, or being in control to slow things down. It's not about micromanaging. I think when you create a calm space for people to share and to be seen and to be heard, that helps to start to slow the conversation down a little bit, and for not things to get too triggered and too hectic.
I feel like slowing down sometimes. I think a lot of people out there that are listening to this will agree with that. Do you think then that people don't listen to each other enough?
100%. Yeah, I think listening is one of the most underrated communication tools or skills that you can have. I think all too often people are just in a hurry to reply. So we're listening to reply versus listening to understand. And it can be listening in terms of a verbal or also in written form, and particularly because we spend so much of our time on text, on email. It's also a form of listening. We're not really comprehending or giving ourselves or people the space to think, well, what is this person? What is Justin actually asking me, or the statement that he's making? And in verbal conversations, you can see it. People are just sitting there going, not really taking it in. They're just waiting for a pause and then inserting their point of view. And it's one of the things that I really encourage my clients, my coaching clients, is to practice the art of listening. And one way you can do that, if you don't understand something, is to ask questions. And asking really good questions is also a key to further understanding the other person, but also giving them that space for them to really clarify their thoughts. And that's a lot of the time people misunderstand one another. They get triggered, they get amped, and that's where the confusion kind of kicks in. So the art of listening, I think, is, some people it's more intuitive than others, but you can certainly learn it as a skill. And there's different techniques that I work with to do that with my clients.
I once worked with a really inspirational sales leader. His name's Ray Duggins, my old boss. If you're Ray, you're listening, shout out to you. But he said something which probably wasn't necessarily original, but it really resonated with me. He would always say to the team, "You've got 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use them in balance." That really does sum it up, doesn't it?
Very much so. Very much so. And I think just giving people, a bit of space. So, for example, a question that you can that I always like to ask people is, "Hey, Justin, how are you?" "Good. How are you doing?" "Oh, great." You're not actually saying anything, and we do this time and time again in the street or in meetings. But if I were to say to you, "Hey, Neil, how's it going?" "Good." "Justin, how's your day started?" Right? And again, depending on the time, if it's the middle of the night, and obviously a bit redundant. "How's your day started?" And then sit back and just see what they say, because your day starts when you open your eyes, not when you open your laptop or look at your phone. That's when your day starts. And I think you can get some really good insights from that by asking that question. I do it when I'm out and about, grabbing a coffee or something, and somebody comes over, a server comes over. "Hey, how are you? How's your day start?" "Well, got up a bit late. Had to run for the bus. Bus wasn't there, so I got the train. And now I'm here." "How often does that happen?" "Well, it's quite frequently." And then all of a sudden you start to get this interaction, and the person feels seen and they feel heard. And it's not that you you do it for personal gain, but that level of interaction, I bet you get the best cup of coffee afterwards, because you've given them the time and the space.
Right. Yeah, indeed. 100%. I'm going to have to try that as well next time I go for a coffee. Good tip.
But it's something, it can be, people can be, really positive. "Oh, thanks for asking. I'm having a great day for this reason." Or I'm like, so, or "Can't wait to the end of the week." "Oh, why is that?" It just gives people that space. And I think that's important. So it's a combination of, some of the earlier things I said about listening to people, but also seeing people. And then you make them feel heard, make them feel valued, special.
You said something earlier there about misunderstanding people, and you can get triggered by that. So it's interesting, topic. A lot of people I come across, especially in a remote working setting, struggle with triggers. And I think that's because in a way we're not really off, are we? We're on like you said, we're on WhatsApp, we're on email, we're communicating, but we're not listening. We get bombarded with messages. I certainly feel like more than ever, and potentially that's taking place in a post-COVID world, because work has become so much more remote, and with communications channels are accessible literally everywhere, right? Even on your Apple smartwatch. So your wrist doesn't even get a break anymore either. But it's this thing about triggers. So what have your experience there with working with people and avoiding being triggered or dealing with triggers?
There's a 5-second rule, which is not the one about toast falling face down on the floor, but the 5-second rule of the cognitive thought process. So our brains kick in after 5 seconds, and we tend to get triggered in 3 stages, 3 ways. We have a thought, an emotion, and then an action. Thought, emotion, action. So someone might make a statement and we give some attention to that statement. We give it a thought. It's like we're thinking that's not right. What Justin said, that's not right. And then I put an emotion to it. So he's trying to squeeze me out of the conversation. He wants me out of the project. Whatever it might be. And then we put an action to it. And the action might be, right, next time I'm in a conversation with Justin, I'm not going to share any information because he's after my job. I mean, I'm exaggerating. Now, all that happens up here in our brain. You might have said something, a statement, and the fundamental is that everything starts as neutral. All statements are neutral. We apply a thought, an emotion, and an action to it. And it's, if you can actually create some, again, going back to a pause, if you can create something in those 5 seconds before everything kicks in, hold on, what's justice? Oh, it's neutral. Before you go down that spiral, down that rabbit hole, you're in a better place. And it remains, it keeps you in that calm space between sort of fight or flight, in the sort of the ideal homeostasis, neutral place that we're all looking for. Okay, all right. So that statement's neutral. And the way that I look at it is, I think your video as well as audio podcast, is a ball, right? So the words that you say, the conversation we're having is this ball, right? So imagine we're sitting opposite each other at a table and you say some words to me, you make a statement to me, and it's this ball. And the ball is now, just placing it down, in front of me on the table. I have a choice to pick up that ball quickly and go, yes, and embrace all those thoughts and words. Or I can just go, I'm looking at this ball. Yeah. I don't have to accept what you're saying. I can just listen, I can observe, and I'm going to go, right, I'm going to ask some questions about that. And that creates that boundary without me being triggered into my thought, emotion, and action. And this happens all the time at work and in life, and particularly with, there's a benefit to, texting and SMS and all the rest of it. It's interestingly, though, the statistics, there's an increase in voice notes because people want to leave a voice note so that the nuance of what they're saying isn't misunderstood.
Future Fuzz is sponsored by SalesSource, B2B pipeline management and sales growth for your business.
I'm absolutely a big fan of voice notes, but some people I work with are not. Not necessarily work with, no, but friends, even the best friend. He's like, oh, not a voice note again.
Yeah.
But we're so detached from the conversation. I posted not so long ago is that we need to measure performance, especially in sales and marketing, by the conversation. Because if you're not having that conversation, you're making assumptions. And if you're not making that connection, how are you going to get to know someone?
True.
We are still selling human to human. We are not doing it robot to robot yet. That's not happened quite yet. And what would be your advice to people then to break that habit and break that mold? To not, what other things could they do to not get triggered or listen and communicate in a better way? Are there any things that you've seen really work?
Well, just sticking on that theme for now, I think just controlling your breathing, controlling your focus, controlling your attention. So it's building a little bit more discipline to it. Just practice at home, practice with your friends before you go into the workplace. And yeah, it's we used to say, oh, just count to 5, go in another room, go and sit on the step. All those calming devices that we have as children or parents to children are because of that. It's just lowering your energy. And because people connect on a certain energy and a certain frequency. And if you're off, then you're never going to connect. You're never going to be on the same energy and frequency. So anything that you can do to neutralize that, I don't mean sanitize it, but neutralize it, like breathing, like literally counting to 5 in your head, or, okay, I'm just going to pause for a moment and think about that. Or you repeat the last thing they say. Okay, so for clarity, we're looking for tips to slow down conversations. Okay, so how do we avoid responding immediately? Is that what you're asking me? Anything like that puts a natural pause like I'm not picking up the ball right away. That's an opportunity to create a little bit of space. And that's all we're really asking to do, to have that space in the conversation, to let it breathe. We rush so much into everything.
Yeah, we do indeed. Yeah, you want to give it that buffer zone in a way.
Yeah.
The more opportunity you give it there, the less it's going to blow up in your face at a later stage, right?
For sure. And I think that the way that our days are structured now, we miss those little spaces. We miss those little pauses in our day. And there's a wonderful, I'm blanking who it was, but there's somebody he came up with. Like, do you know why we have 30-minute meetings and 60-minute meetings? It's because the software is designed that way. You know, if we go, I'd like to have a 12-minute meeting or a 42-minute meeting, we should be able to. Why? Because I think the subject that you and I need to talk about will take 10 minutes and then we've got 2 minutes of wrap up, or 35 minutes and 7 minutes of wrap up. But no, we plug in 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 2 hours, whatever it might be, without really giving attention to how much time do we actually need for this comment. Do we need to have a meeting where we gather people together? And there was something that I did in the book where I talked about where you calculate how much a meeting costs by roughly with like people's hourly rates. And you go, for all of us, you know, at different levels of the organization, to be sitting in here for an hour, it's going to cost us, think of a number.
Right.
You know, do we really need to invest that amount of time for this decision, or can we do it another way? So finding those metrics, money usually works. Revenue, impact of revenue, that usually gets people's attention. But just thinking about, do we need to have long meetings, or can you actually say, yes, the software is a 30-minute or a 60-minute, but we're actually going to talk for 20 minutes and then give ourselves 5 or 10 minutes space, or 45 and 15 minutes space to wrap up, to write some notes, because we just go back to back to back. What's this meeting? Who's in it? What's the agenda? Have you got that?
You see that a lot with the corporates that you worked in, or the people that you coach now?
Very much so. Yeah. So if for a coaching session, I book in 15 minutes either side.
Mm. You need that buffer.
To need that buffer. Yeah. Have a cup of tea or a warm drink, some water. Just sit, whatever you need to do before you come into a session. Because if I'm coaching somebody and I sandwich between a sales meeting and a go-to-market meeting, they're not going to get the benefits of what we're talking here. And if anything, I think, things are getting faster and people's days just get filled up with meetings. And I think that triggers a lot of stress, because you ask yourself, well, when am I actually doing the work? We're talking about things, but we're not. Are we making a decision? Oh, we've run out of time. Oh, let's book an hour. No, what is it that we're really trying to achieve here? And one of the tools that I ask people to think about is just asking the question, whoever's leading the meeting, and it should be on the agenda, because hopefully there's an agenda. That was some of the good things about, the 90s and the 2000s. We had agendas back then, he said, like an old fart. What will make this meeting successful? Ask the question. What will make this meeting successful is we're going to analyze this problem 3 ways. We're going to discuss 2 routes, and then we're going to make a decision. We're going to spend 15 minutes doing that, 10 minutes to analyze, and then 5 minutes to wrap up. I'm looking for input from everybody. If feel like you're not contributing, then maybe, just read the meeting notes afterwards, go back to your desk, log off, whatever it is. But set the tone.
Yeah.
Set the tone for it, because we don't do that. We just feel like, there's this FOMO, or like, Justin wasn't on that call, or Neil wasn't on that call. False narratives there, absolute false narratives. just where are we adding value to the process? That's what we should really focusing on.
It's going to be my next question is how can you embed, these practices of encouraging kindness, calmness, listening, these ideas of buffers, how can you implement them into, organizations, particularly those that are very fast paced? Because you've worked in some pretty large organizations, but you've also worked with some quite dynamic agencies, right? And agency life can be far like feast or famine. Bam, bam, bam. You're flying
100%.
from the seat of your pants, aren't you? And then the next time, you've got nothing to do. So
Yeah.
how can you implement these practices top down?
To build on that, give some context. I ran global advertising for Lenovo. It was a $45 billion company. My team I was on the East Coast of the US, and my team was in Bangalore, Singapore, and Beijing. And I had 4 agencies in Boston, New York, London, and Chicago. That was my team. I had spent 7 hours a day with a headset and a mic, just talking. And within my agency partners, I had just like a go-to person, the senior account director. And I would empower them. Like, you're my eyes and ears on the ground. I can't be in every conversation. I can't be in every email. I can't be in, logistically, it's not possible across however many time zones it was, just from a practical point of view. So I'm empowering you to lead with kindness. If something's working, do more of that. If it's not, let's talk about it. And with all of them, I would start with the team meetings with a check-in. 2 questions. How's your day started? And then anything that would keep you from being present for the next 30 minutes, 60 minutes. And I used to do this at another company with my team as a Monday status meeting. And we had 60 minutes, and it was always 60 minutes. And I would check in with everybody, and we'd do popcorn style. Didn't matter who it was, who went first, and we all shared. You didn't comment, you didn't kind of catch people, you just let them speak. Open up, be vulnerable, trust one another, share. And they might check in, it might take 5 minutes, it might take 10 minutes. We still finished on the top of the hour, never went over. Because once you've checked people in, once you've got people in, once you've got people seeing each other, hearing each other, they are much more focused. They are like, we just got to get through this status report. We're here, we're present.
Right.
And that's an act of kindness to one another, an act of kindness to the team. I've tried to introduce that to companies that go, we don't have time for that. I'm like, you don't have time to be more effective and efficient? Really? Okay. Because the way you're doing it now, that's really good, right? Without the sarcasm. But it's a powerful tool. It's like rocket fuel for teams. Bring people in. I've had some amazing experiences with that, where a few years ago there was a younger member of the team who was going through some stuff outside of work. And they just said, this is the one place I can be myself once a week.
That's really powerful. In work?
In work. In a status meeting on a Monday. And I was like, okay. And again, nobody commented. We're like,
I am trying that in the next meeting.
And I've also had people where people are like, I'm not checking in today. Like, okay, respect that.
They just didn't want to.
No, and they were just like, you could just see it and you go, okay, after the meeting, I'm going to follow up with them. But it gives you that indicator. It's a really simple, powerful tool, Justin.
Yeah.
And
how do you get people to make sure they don't go blathering on for 15, 20 minutes?
You can kind of steer it a little bit. You're also through practice. It's because it's a repetitive act and it's a team building act. So people kind of, you get a sense you're asking 2 questions, what are the things that are distracting you right now? If you're like a long laundry list of things, you're like, okay, maybe just share one more and then we'll move on to somebody. So you as the leader of the meeting, you steer it. But The other powerful thing with that is that depending on who's in the room, everybody's had their voice heard at the beginning of the conversation. Sometimes people come in and someone starts talking, it's like, right, we're going to go through this, we're going to do this. And someone's going, I've really got something to say, but I'm a bit, and then the point moves on. Once somebody's had their voice heard at the beginning, they're more comfortable and confident and open to share. So again, from that point of view, you're being kind to everybody. You're giving them that space. And I've worked in companies or consulted for companies where this is standard practice. They go a step further where even before they ask the questions, they have a minute and everybody is almost sort of meditates. They just sit with their eyes closed for a minute before. Then we go, okay, are you ready to check in now? And go, yeah. I mean, it's powerful stuff and really simple. And you honor the time that you've come together. So you don't go on, but because you've drawn people into that space, because you've built that openness, that trust, that vulnerability, it's much more effective and efficient.
Yeah, and we personally don't give ourselves the time to take that space. And I think, it's very interesting to give people in a team setting the power to do that. In a group setting, you encourage individuals to say, hey, take some time out, do some focus work, go for a walk, do some meditation, go for a run, whatever you need to do. But then doing it in a group setting absolutely sounds massively powerful.
And again, you can, maybe if it's a bigger group, I did a workshop recently where I introduced this and I was thinking, mixed group of people, different functions, don't always work together. They were like, how's my day started? Great. Well, and they went round the room, and I think there was about 10 people, and you managed it. And I was just like, okay, thanks for sharing. And at the end, when someone's made their statements, you acknowledge it, you say, thank you for sharing, and then you just moved on.
Move on, yeah.
It's powerful stuff, it really is.
And then lastly, with that sharing, does it then, the people then immediately relate it to a specific work task, or it can be anything? Or they sort of said, like, I went for a run and I sprained my ankle, it wasn't very good, or I had a terrible weekend, or, or do they dive in and say, look, guys, we got this campaign running and we need to fix it now?
The encouragement is because it's something that will keep you from being present. It could be work. I've got to get this report done by the end of today. It could be I need to pay a credit card bill. I've locked myself out. I'm in the Netherlands. I've lost my bike key. Whatever it is, that's a distraction. It really doesn't matter. The point is that it's about being open and vulnerable and sharing and giving people the respect and the space. So if somebody says, "Oh, I've done that," oh, that's no. You honor that space and you give people the space to be seen and heard and valued, and that's why it's an act of kindness.
Wonderful. On that note, be open, be vulnerable, and share. Neil, thank you very much for joining the podcast again. Have a wonderful end to the year.
My pleasure, always. Thank you so much. You too.
Thanks for tuning in and making the choice to listen to this podcast. If you liked what you've heard today, please don't forget to subscribe.